issue on the issue of billionaires. They need to be put down, like rabid dogs. All right?
Up next, this left-wing comedian has officially lost his mind. We got to check in with Bill Burr, who honestly I think can be funny. I've seen sets from him and comedy that I did think was funny, and he's pushed back on political correctness and other stuff, but he ultimately does seem to be a progressive, and frankly, he's getting kind of unhinged. He does a daily podcast, or not daily, a couple times a week actually, and it's not him telling jokes. It's him giving his opinions on things, right? Because some comedians do both. They do like political commentary and jokes. And if they're in joke mode, I try not to get like offended over the things they say, even if I find them offensive. Like a lot of Republicans are very upset about an SNL skit right now. To me, at the end of the day, it's a skit. Like it's meant to be funny. So I'm going to interpret it differently than someone doing serious political commentary. But Bill Burr on his podcast is basically doing political commentary, and he just called for billionaires to be killed. Yes, seriously. Take a listen.
Like, I am so tired of hearing about people going to bed worried about what's going to happen next week. There is so much fucking money in this country. And there's so much work being done, And if you work a full fucking week at a job, you should be able to pay your fucking rent. You shouldn't have to go out and get another fucking job and still be struggling. It's bad for the country because then the kids don't see their parents and they're not getting the upbringing that they need. It's so at least these fucking billionaires, they need to be put down. Like fucking rabid dogs. They're like rabid with fucking greed and just going out and just dividing everybody. Just the epitome of this time right now, like how divisive we are, that the Gulf of Mexico is now called the Gulf of America, and people get excited. Like, how the does that help your wallet? It's an empty gesture, and then it's also like a racist gesture. Like that's the white guy that's him saying fuck Mexicans without saying it. Like who has a fucking problem with Mexicans? Like what is the real problem? This is just such an ugly time.
So, there's a lot to unpack there, but first and foremost, it's kind of insane to simultaneously be lamenting what an ugly time it is in our politics while calling for people to be put down like effing dogs. You are contributing to that problem, Bill, like with that kind of toxic and insane and unhinged rhetoric. Even if you disagree with billionaires and you want to tax them or whatever, we can have that debate, that conversation. But like, you're not the good guy when you're calling for people to be summarily executed like animals. You sound unhinged. And he's also just basically entirely wrong. Billionaires are not the problem with why we don't have... He makes it sound like, oh, there's just all this wealth and infinite resources and we just choose to let people be hungry or whatever. No. A 2021 analysis found, and I'll link to this, like I always link to the sources, that you could confiscate all the wealth from U.S. billionaires and you would fund our government, federal, state, and local for about 6 months. Existing programs, not new ones, not universal healthcare, anything else. You cannot simply just take wealth from rich people and then everyone can have everything and all this scarcity. No, scarcity is the reality of the world. Okay? And the things he's talking about are very real problems that people are understandably frustrated about, like the lack of affordable housing. But it is not caused by billionaires existing. It's caused by the government. And it's broken, dysfunctional regulations and zoning rules and permitting processes that have strangled the supply of housing. And now we have all these people who want housing, but a very limited supply in all these areas. So of course prices are going to be high. People won't be able to afford homes. But there's nothing to do with Jeff Bezos, who, by the way, has created more jobs and opportunity for people than he'll ever see in his personal balance sheet reflected. It is just a demagogical scapegoat that they want to pull out these evil billionaires as if they're the problem. The billionaires didn't cause the inflation that bankrupted American families. Some of it was COVID and supply chain related, but a lot of it was because the government ran the money printer like crazy, printed trillions of dollars out of thin air. What did you expect would happen? Passed massive stimulus bills that were very inefficient and wasteful, and just spent trillions of more dollars we don't have. You can't blame billionaires for any of that. It's the government that did that. And when you're just scapegoating people because they make for an easy punching bag, because a lot of people don't like really rich people, it's lame. It's just a cheap kind of cop-out. It's intellectual sophistry, honestly. And so don't stick to jokes if you're going to do jokes and be a comedian. But if you're going to do political commentary, you don't get to say unhinged and inaccurate things, then be like, well, I'm just a comedian. If you're doing jokes, that's fine, but that's not what this was, at least not from my telling and my reading of it. And I'm so sick of ludicrously wealthy people. I'm sure Bill Burr is a multi-millionaire trashing billionaires. Like, you're different. Obviously, there's a magnitude of difference between somebody who's worth 10 million and somebody who's worth $1 billion. But like, you're still incredibly rich. And the socialists are not going to spare you. The ones that want to eat the rich, get out the guillotine, they're not going to spare you just because you team up with them against Jeff Bezos. Like, you're still on the chopping block, babe. And I'd love to see Bill Burr's finances and see how much he's donating to people. Maybe it's a lot, I don't know, but it better be. If you're going to be castigating other rich people like this, it better be a huge portion of your disposable income going to feed the homeless and going to house the unhoused and all this, because otherwise you would just be another hypocritical virtue signaler. And I'm sure that couldn't possibly be the case. It was kind of alarming to me to see Bill Burr's commentary here praised by one of the most radical and insane people on the internet, left-wing streamer and socialist Hassan Piker. Take a listen to what he had to say.
On the issue of billionaires, they need to be put down, like rabid dogs. All right? Billionaires are good for no one but themselves. Okay, I've just been a Bill Burr fan for years, and I used to listen to his podcast all the time. But that's part of the reason why I love Bill Burr, is because like he has a way of speaking the language. I'll never be able to do that. Our background is different. Our aesthetics are different. You know what I mean? Bill Burr is the guy who appeals to your coworkers. Like, your coworkers will listen to Bill Burr and go, "Oh, this is a funny guy. I can see where he's coming from."
So 2 things about that clip. One, you got one of the most popular personalities on the internet, a Twitch superstar, just casually agreeing that billionaires should be killed. That's fine. That's normal and good. Like, how do they get away with saying this? I can't say, keep trans women out of women's sports without getting censored for hate speech by half these platforms, but they can just casually support killing people that they don't like. Like, the double standards are unreal on these platforms, and yet somehow millions of people look to this person for political guidance and influence, which is terrifying. But actually, I think he has a point with the second point he made. This is one of the problems I have with Bill Burr. I do find him funny sometimes, but he actually holds very left-wing and radical views on a whole number of issues, but kind of frames them in this politically incorrect, kind of working man, palatable way that I actually think is concerning to me, because it's almost like backdooring these ideas into unsuspecting audiences who, if they realize that what they were hearing was, like in the case of executing billionaires, like radical Marxism and class envy, would be opposed to it. But because they hear it from somebody like Bill Burr, who sounds like them and is kind of just shooting the shit and is funny, they kind of let their guard down and sometimes fall for it. I actually agree with Hassan. But where I disagree is with, he sees that as a good development. I see it as a deeply disturbing one. But what do you guys think? Are you fans of Bill Burr? Did you find what he said here as concerning as I did? Let me know in the comments.